What's the first thing you think of when you hear the term Marvel Comics? Okay. Well, this is what I think of. Marvel Comics, number 1. Published August 31st, 1939, the day before World War II began. This is the beginning of the Marvel Comics Group, or as it was known then, Timely Comics. It featured the first appearances of such characters as the Human Torch. No, not that one, the other one. The Angel, the Submariner, the Mast Raider, and Khazar. The first issue quickly outsold, prompting Timely to make more comics, eventually leading to the Marvel Comics that we all know today. But what about that first issue, though? What were the stories that began Marvel? Are they any good? And do they have any lasting impact on the way Marvel Comics portrays its characters today? The cover showcases the first story of the magazine, The Human Torch. When you hear that name, you probably first think of Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four, but before him, there was the original, created by writer and artist Carl Burgos. The story opens with a press conference where a scientist named Phineas Horton unveils his great invention, an android who, due to mistakes made during the creation process, bursts into flames upon contact with air. Horton nicknames it the Human Torch. Due to public concern, Horton decides to bury it in cement to prevent it from causing any harm, but the Human Torch manages to escape and eventually makes its way into the city. At every turn, the authorities try to destroy it. Eventually, he gets captured by gangsters who attempt to use him in a protection racket. The Torch, however, turns against the gangsters and discovers that nitrogen can make it so that he can control whether or not he can burst into flames. He gets apprehended by the police and is returned to the custody of Dr. Horton, who now plans to use him to make a fortune. The Human Torch, however, decides that no one will ever use me for selfish gain or crime, and flies off. If this story sounds like it's all over the place, it kind of is, but in a good way. At no point in the story was I bored. I always wanted to know what was going to happen next, and it does establish a Marvel trope, the idea that the main character is an outcast of society. This is seen with characters such as the Hulk and the X-Men, and there's elements of that here with the public wanting the Torch to be destroyed. On the other hand, the stuff with the gangsters seems rather shoehorned in just to make him a superhero, although it's still not a bad start to the character, and the elements that work make it stand out from the other superheroes from the same time, like Superman and Batman. Next is the Angel. First off, look at this guy. Look at this guy. He looks like someone went on ChatGPT and typed out "generate image of generic 1940s superhero." Okay, it's not a terrible design, but after the Human Torch, this guy is a bit of a disappointment. The character was created by artist Paul Gaveston and an unknown writer. The story is basically a superhero fighting some gangster type of story. There isn't really much to say. There's nothing about the Angel that really makes him unique or interesting. Evidently, though, Timely publisher Martin Goodman thought that the Angel was headliner material and regularly showcased him on a few subsequent covers. Did it pay off? Better question, have you ever heard of the Angel before watching this video? Probably not. Next up is Namor, the Submariner, created by artist Bill Everett. This story was actually first published not in Marvel Comics number 1, but instead in a failed promotional comic called Motion Pictures Funnies Weekly. When that publisher went belly up, Everett took the story to Timely. Anyway, Namor is an aquatic-based character, the son of a human sea captain and a princess from Atlantis. A majority of his fellow Atlanteans were killed by humans, so Namor decides to wreak vengeance on the surface world, basically killing divers, sailors, lighthouse workers, basically anyone in his way. There's a touch of anti-colonialism in this story. As a result, Namor isn't really so much a superhero, but more of an anti-hero. And he would remain this way for a little while, but later on, in the 40s, he'd fight more conventional bad guys, like the Nazis. These days, they go back and forth on whether or not he's a good guy or a bad guy, depending on the story. Anyway, his first story is a good one, and Bill Everett probably delivers the best artwork in this first issue. After that, we have The Mast Raider by artist and writer Al Anders. I don't have much to say about it. It's a Western masked vigilante where a guy named Jim Gardley becomes the Mast Raider, real original name by the way, and goes up against a corrupt landowner. It's not particularly good, it's not particularly bad, it's just, give me the Lone Ranger or Jonah Hex any day. In fact, I have just as much to say about the next story. Jungle Terror. Yeah, real original title, Jungle Terror. And it's a jungle adventure full of plains, jungle, and outdated racial stereotypes. In the words of a wise man.
Enough said.
Next is yet another jungle adventure, featuring Khazar. Much like the Human Torch, there is a more modern version of Khazar. We're focusing on the original version, which actually, much like Namor, did not first appear in Marvel Comics #1. The founder of Timely Comics, Martin Goodman, was a pulp publisher in the years prior, and Khazar first appeared in one of his magazines. The original character was created by Bob Berg. Khazar is basically a Tarzan knockoff. It's basically that. Family gets lost in the jungle, boy grows up in the jungle, family dies, his friends are animals. I don't have much else to say. So, okay, not all the stories in Marvel Comics #1 are as equally good or have aged the best. But that doesn't make their impact any lesser. The Human Torch and Namor would later become Timely Comics' most popular characters during the 1940s, alongside Captain America, before being phased out of popularity. In the 1960s, the concept of the Human Torch was revitalized in the pages of Fantastic Four in the form of Johnny Storm, and Namor would also make his return in Fantastic Four. Khazar also inspired another version of the character in the 1960s in X-Men, and while relatively obscure, the Angel and Mast Raider would make future appearances in comics even in the modern day. And in any case, this was the beginning of the Marvel Universe. This is where you start. Without it, there's no Captain America, no Fantastic Four, no Hulk, no Spider-Man, no Avengers. So, however dated the writing and the art might be, it shows that from a small acorn, a larger tree can grow. If you liked this video, subscribe to Killer Gorilla Productions.